always been the family anchor, handling every crisis, until the day I needed them back. At 42, I thought I understood loyalty. Then my shoulder surgery taught me the brutal difference between family and people who just happen to share your DNA. When I whispered "thanks for showing me who you really are" into that phone, I had no idea those words would reshape everything I believed about unconditional love. 3 weeks later, I made a decision that sent shockwaves through our carefully constructed family dynamic. 38 messages flooded my phone. "Please forgive us. We're desperate. Don't abandon us like this." But sometimes, the most profound act of self-love is learning to walk away from people who would leave you crawling. I've never been one to air family business online, but something happened recently that shattered every assumption I had about the people closest to me. I'm still processing it all, honestly. Still trying to make sense of how we went from Sunday dinners and group texts to complete radio silence and a phone full of desperate voicemails. Let me paint you the picture. I'm the eldest of two sons, always been the family anchor. You know, the type of the one everyone calls when the washing machine floods the basement, when someone needs a ride to the airport at 5 in the morning, when there's a family crisis that requires someone level-headed to take charge. My younger brother David is 31, married to Rebecca, living about 20 minutes across town in their suburban starter home. Sweet couple, no kids yet, always talking about their next adventure. I live in the converted apartment beneath my parents' house. Not glamorous, but it works. We're all woven together financially and practically shared streaming accounts, family phone plan, group grocery runs to Costco. It's the kind of setup where everyone contributes something, and somehow it all balances out. Or so I thought. The shoulder surgery wasn't supposed to be a big deal. Rotator cuff repair, common enough that my orthopedic surgeon probably does 3 a week. But the recovery requirements were crystal clear. No lifting anything heavier than a coffee cup for 6 weeks. No driving for at least 2 weeks. Assistance needed with basic tasks like reaching overhead or carrying groceries upstairs. The physical therapist was adamant about medication timing and wound care. This wasn't a tough-it-out situation. My family rallied around the surgery plan with what felt like genuine enthusiasm. Mom created this elaborate group chat called Michael's Recovery Team, with detailed schedules for who would handle what. Dad promised to take the first few days off work. David and Rebecca volunteered for grocery runs and medication reminders. Everyone seemed genuinely invested in making sure I healed properly. The surgery itself went smoothly. Mom stayed overnight that first night, fussing over ice packs and making sure I was comfortable. Dad checked in every few hours, asking about pain levels and whether I needed anything. I felt supported, cared for, grateful, even, for having such an attentive family. But somewhere around day 3, the energy shifted in ways I couldn't quite name at first. Mom started arriving later in the mornings, mentioning errands and appointments that seemed to multiply overnight. David's responses in the group chat became shorter, less frequent. When I text asking about medication pickups or grocery runs, the replies came hours later, if at all. I chalked it up to everyone having their own lives, their own responsibilities. I didn't want to be the needy patient demanding constant attention. By day 5, the house felt eerily quiet during the day. I'd wake up to an empty kitchen, my morning medications sitting just out of reach on the counter where someone had left them the night before. The refrigerator, which we'd stocked with easy to prepare meals before surgery, was down to some questionable leftover Chinese food and a container of Greek yogurt that had seen better days. I tried making it up the stairs to the main kitchen, thinking maybe there was food I'd forgotten about. Halfway up, my balance shifted wrong, and I nearly tumbled backward. The sharp pain shooting through my shoulder reminded me exactly why those physical restrictions existed. I managed to get back down safely, but the incident left me shaky and more aware of how isolated I'd become. That evening, I tried calling Mom, straight to voicemail. Dad's phone rang endlessly before clicking to his recording. David didn't even answer. The group chat that had been so active during surgery planning was now a digital ghost town. I sat in my living room, shoulder throbbing, stomach growling, wondering if I'd somehow misunderstood the recovery timeline everyone had committed to. Day 6 brought a new level of surreal abandonment. I woke up to complete silence upstairs, no coffee brewing, no morning news, no sounds of anyone moving around. My medication alarm went off at 9 a.m., but the pills were still on that impossible-to-reach shelf. I spent 20 minutes trying to jury-rig a way to get them down using a kitchen tongs and a step stool, nearly falling twice in the process. By noon, the hunger was becoming impossible to ignore. I managed to find some stale crackers in my bedroom nightstand and a warm can of Sprite that had been sitting on my dresser since before surgery. Not exactly the nutritious recovery diet the doctor had recommended, but it was something. That's when I decided to call David directly. I needed answers, needed to understand where everyone had disappeared to when I needed them most. He answered on the fourth ring, and I immediately heard wind noise and music in the background. Laughter. Multiple voices. The distinct sound of ski lift machinery. "Hey, what's going on?" he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. He was having a good time, wherever he was. "David, where's everyone? I've been trying to reach Mom and Dad since yesterday. I need help with my medications, and there's no food in the house." There was a pause. Then he laughed. Actually laughed. "Oh man, we're up at Mammoth. Mom and Dad, Rebecca and me. The powder is incredible this week. You should see these runs." I felt something cold settle in my stomach that had nothing to do with hunger. "I'm sorry, what? You're skiing?" I thought. "I mean, the recovery plan. Look, Michael, we planned this trip months ago. You know how hard it is to get everyone's schedules aligned. You're a grown man. You'll figure it out. Just order some delivery or something." The casual dismissal in his voice was like a physical blow. "David, I can't even reach my medications. I almost fell down the stairs yesterday trying to get food. This isn't about being independent. I literally cannot take care of myself right now." His tone shifted to irritation. "Come on, don't guilt trip me. We're on vacation, not your personal servants. You always make everything about you, even when we're trying to have a family trip. Can't you just handle this like an adult for once?" The words hit me like a slap. In that moment, listening to my brother dismiss my genuine medical needs while he enjoyed a family vacation I hadn't even known was happening, something fundamental shifted inside me. "Thanks for showing me who you really are," I whispered and hung up. I sat staring at my phone for what felt like hours. The group chat that had once buzzed with surgery support plans was now a monument to abandoned promises. I tried calling Mom one more time, a voicemail. Dad, same result. It was as if I'd become invisible the moment I actually needed the help they'd all volunteered to provide. The next few days passed in a haze of improvisation and growing anger. I survived on delivery food that I had to retrieve from my doorstep in painful, awkward trips. I missed medication doses when I couldn't reach the bottles. I ate crackers for dinner and tried to convince myself this was somehow normal, somehow acceptable. But late at night, when the pain medication wore off and I lay awake listening to the empty house around me, I started making mental lists. Every family emergency I'd dropped everything to handle. Every financial crisis I'd helped solve. Every middle-of-the-night phone call I'd answered without hesitation. Every birthday party I'd organized. Every family gathering I'd coordinated. Every time someone needed a reliable person to count on. I wasn't just the eldest son. I was the family infrastructure. And they'd all just left. When they returned from their ski trip 5 days later, I heard them upstairs unpacking, laughing about their adventures, sharing photos. Not one of them came downstairs to check on me. Not one of them acknowledged that they'd abandoned their recovery commitments. It was as if the previous week had simply been erased from their collective memory. That's when I made the decision that would change everything. I started small, systematically removing myself from every shared responsibility that had made me indispensable. I changed the passwords to streaming accounts that were under my name. I contacted our mobile phone provider and removed myself from the family plan. I called the bank and requested to be taken off all joint accounts and automatic bill payments. The first sign of impact came 2 days later. David texted asking for the code to our shared storage unit, the one where everyone kept seasonal equipment, holiday decorations, and overflow belongings. I simply replied, "Not available anymore." 3 question marks appeared, then nothing. Next came Mom, panicked about a bounce payment for the house insurance. A policy I'd been automatically paying for 3 years without anyone even remembering it was my account. "You can't just stop paying things without warning us," she said when she called. "You left me without food or medication for a week," I replied. "I think we're even." Dad tried the reasonable approach, calling to explain that this wasn't like me. and that I was making things unnecessarily complicated. I told him I was simplifying things, actually, making it clear that I was no longer available as the family's unpaid support system. David showed up at my door that weekend, clearly agitated. He didn't knock, just used his key and walked into my apartment like he owned the place. "You're being ridiculous," he said without preamble. "Mom is upset, Dad is frustrated, and frankly, you're acting like a child. So we went on a trip." "So what? You survived, didn't you?" "Barely," I said. "And that's the point. You all promised to help, then disappeared when it was inconvenient." "It was bad timing," he insisted. "We'd planned that trip for months. You know how expensive those lift tickets are. We couldn't just cancel everything because you needed someone to open your pill bottles." The casual cruelty of that statement, reducing my legitimate medical needs to such a trivial inconvenience, clarified everything I needed to know about how my family viewed me. "Get out," I said quietly. "Michael, come on, get out, and leave your key." He threw the key on my coffee table and stormed out, muttering about how I was ruining the family and making everything about myself. Over the following weeks, the consequences of my withdrawal became increasingly apparent. Bills went unpaid because no one else knew how to access the accounts. The yard went unmowed because I'd always handled landscaping. Family events were canceled because I was no longer organizing and financing them. The shared cabin rental that we'd used for holidays for years was forfeited because the lease was in my name, and I terminated it. My phone became a constant stream of increasingly desperate messages. Voicemails from Mom ranging from angry to pleading. Texts from Dad demanding I stop this nonsense. Messages from extended family members who'd been recruited to convince me to be the bigger person and think about family unity. But the messages that revealed the most were from David. Initial anger gave way to confusion, then frustration, then something approaching panic as he realized how much of the family's practical functionality had been dependent on my invisible labor. "The Wi-Fi isn't working, and I don't know the account information. How do I access the family storage unit? Mom can't figure out the online banking, and all the utility bills are behind. Can you please just call me back? This is getting out of hand." I read each message and deleted it without responding. The silence, I discovered, was its own form of communication. 3 weeks after I'd begun my systematic withdrawal, my phone exploded with activity. 38 messages in a single morning, all from different family members, all carrying the same desperate energy. "Please talk to us. We're begging you. We didn't realize how much you do for everyone. We made a mistake. Don't abandon the family like this. We need you." I scrolled through message after message, looking for the one word that would matter most. The word that might indicate genuine understanding rather than panic about their own inconvenience. Sorry, it wasn't there. Not once. 38 messages of pleading and desperation, but not a single acknowledgement that they had done anything wrong. Not one apology for leaving me helpless and alone when I needed them most. Just a desperate desire for me to resume my role as the family's unpaid support system. That's when I understood that this was never about the ski trip. It was about a fundamental dynamic where my needs would always be secondary to their convenience, where my value was measured entirely by my usefulness, where my pain was acceptable as long as it didn't interfere with their plans. I turned my phone face down and walked away. I'm not waiting for an apology anymore. I'm not holding my breath for some moment of family reconciliation where everyone suddenly understands what they put me through. I've learned something valuable in these weeks of silence. I don't need people who only appreciate me when I'm absent. The shoulder has healed beautifully, by the way. Turns out I'm more resilient than any of us realized. I've built a life that doesn't depend on people who would abandon me in my weakest moments. I've discovered the profound peace that comes from surrounding yourself only with people who show up not just when it's convenient, but especially when it's not. My neighbor, Christopher, has become more helpful and dependable than my biological family ever was. He checks in regularly, helps with groceries when needed, and somehow manages to do this without making me feel like a burden. Funny how some people can effortlessly provide the basic human decency that my own family found so impossible to maintain. The messages have slowed down now. Occasionally, I'll get a text from Mom or David, testing whether I've softened, whether I'm ready to pretend none of this happened and return to our old patterns. I read them with the detached interest you might have for a news story about strangers. Sometimes people ask if I miss them, if I'm lonely, if I regret drawing such a hard line. The answer is complicated. I miss the family I thought I had, the one that existed in group photos and holiday memories. But I don't miss the anxiety of being everyone's backup plan. I don't miss the exhaustion of being perpetually available for other people's crises while my own needs went unnoticed. I've learned that true family isn't about shared DNA or holiday traditions. It's about showing up when showing up matters. It's about keeping promises, especially the uncomfortable ones. It's about recognizing that love is a verb, not just a feeling you claim to have when it's convenient. If you're someone who always ends up being the responsible one, the reliable one, the one everyone calls when they need something fixed or organized or paid for, please hear this. Your needs matter too. Your pain is not less important than their convenience. You are not required to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. And if you're someone who has people like that in your life, people who quietly handle things so you don't have to, people who show up reliably without being asked, maybe take a moment to appreciate them before they decide they're tired of being taken for granted. Because sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for someone is to let them experience the natural consequences of their choices. Sometimes, walking away is the only way to teach people what your presence was actually worth. Those 38 messages are still on my phone. I keep them as a reminder not of what I've lost, but of what I've gained. The freedom to choose who deserves my energy. The peace that comes from knowing my worth isn't determined by how useful I am to people who wouldn't cross the street to help me. Recovery, it turns out, was about more than just my shoulder. It was about finally healing from the exhaustion of being everyone's solution while remaining nobody's priority. And that kind of healing? That's something no family vacation could ever take away from me.